Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Chris, for that very kind introduction. And special thanks to Russ Hancock and his team for putting together this incredible conference. What a special privilege it is to be here with you today. So I always welcome the opportunity to be back here in the Silicon Valley, my hometown, and starting my day with a walk at the Dish, taking in the sights and having my favorite coffee cake at Hobie's. There's nothing like those two factors to remind me that I'm home. And of course, with the picturesque walk, there's the traffic on 101, as Russ and Stefan talked about earlier this morning. Now, some of us may long for the days of the easy drives when 101 was spotted or littered with not high-tech companies, but apricot orchards and eucalyptus groves. Not I. While I may not welcome traffic congestion, that traffic and the high price of real estate and other challenges being discussed here at the conference today manifest from Silicon Valley's role as a primary engine of American economic success, fueled by exponential growth and unprecedented innovation. That growth fuels competition, job creation, new technologies, and products and services that revolutionize the world and the way in which we live. As all of you know, there's nothing quite like the Silicon Valley in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship. That's why this region is truly special. It's why people from all over the world over the past 50 years have come here to start their companies. So, conferences such as State of the Valley are important because they allow us to come together to discuss the Valley's opportunities and challenges as it works to continue to remain at the forefront of innovation, economic growth, and quality of life. Exactly 1 month ago, President Obama stood before Congress giving his last State of the Union address. While laying out his agenda for 2016, he implored all of us not just to look at 2016, the year ahead, but to look beyond, at least to the 5-year, 10-year, and 20-year time horizons. The future the president foresaw and referenced featured an economy driven by innovation and empowered by an educational system built to empower all of our young people for growth in the 21st century economy. As the president said himself, America is every immigrant and entrepreneur, from Boston to Austin to the Silicon Valley, racing to shape a better future. In so many ways, the president spoke about the future that is currently the present reality in the Silicon Valley. So it's no surprise that over the last 7 years of this administration, Silicon Valley has been a driving force on national policy issues, as well as the cutting edge of innovation. As this conference's agenda highlights, all of society's challenges and opportunities ultimately stem from a public and private sector working together to enable each to do what it does best. Like many of the technologists and executives who brought their Silicon Valley honed expertise to Washington, D.C. over the last 7 years, I was drawn to public service and the opportunity to use my Silicon Valley-based developed talents in the service of our country. To wake up every morning knowing that you are playing a small part in the mission to improve our government and the state of our society is both an honor and a privilege. That said, leaving the Silicon Valley for DC has had some challenges. Some of those challenges include a serious lack of 49ers fans and Giants fans on the opposite coast, learning how to drive through snow, and having to deal with a blizzard that dumped 2 feet of snow within 24 hours time period. So these are easily overcome with a little sense of humor. However, other challenges require some patience and direction. For instance, those of us who have worked in the Valley are used to operating at internet speed. Places of Washington, certain parts in Washington, move at more like dial-up speed. Nevertheless, in my 3rd year in Washington, I'm seeing similarities between Silicon Valley and Washington where it matters most, namely in the work ethic, in the dedication, and the vision that the future can be a better place. Whether you're in DC or the Silicon Valley, you'll find that the workforce is highly intelligent, super educated, and above all, motivated to change the world for the better. In Silicon Valley, through technology, and in Washington, DC, through policy. But the synergy between Silicon Valley and DC is so much more than just human capital. It's about a shared perspective that looks to the future, embraces innovation, and isn't afraid to try something new. You don't have to look far to see how Silicon Valley's innovations have influenced not just Washington, but our country. One obvious example. Think about a few California startups that have influenced the way the federal government communicates with the American public. Whether it's through Facebook, Twitter, or Snapchat, the White House, federal departments, and Congress are embracing social media to communicate with its constituents. Gone are the days of merely writing letters or holding press conferences to communicate. That change began here in the Valley. Likewise, on an assortment of issues, the Silicon Valley's early recognition and leadership on cutting-edge policy issues continues to make an impact on the national stage. From big data to intellectual property, Silicon Valley has made its voice heard on issues both on how we govern and how we innovate. However, to continue to create an environment that fosters innovation and technological advancement, Silicon Valley must continue to exert equal efforts on the issues of policy formation as technological formation. We already know that many of you in this room have founded companies or have come up with ideas that you hope will revolutionize the world. But the more revolutionary and disruptive your technology and business model, the more likely you are to run up against legal and regulatory hurdles. Every day we read about new disruptions to existing industries, to consumer expectations, and sometimes to our legal and regulatory frameworks. Maybe your company deploys drones overhead to view and take pictures of the globe below, or takes a new view on online gaming, or maybe you're developing technology for driverless cars. Regardless of the area in which you are innovating, the laws, policies, and procedures emanating from both state and federal government impact your ability to develop these ideas, to expand your business, and to bring your products to the marketplace. So, engage early and often with your legislators, with your policymakers, and with your administrative agencies so that they have the input they need to help your business not only survive, but thrive. By engaging with appropriate governmental and regulatory agencies and leaning forward on the public policy process, you can help ensure a business environment in which your innovations and enterprises have the opportunity to thrive for the benefit of our society. These innovations and the policy issues that surround them are the center of a modern economy, where intellectual property and innovation play a leading role. 50 years ago, a company's most valuable assets were probably its tangible assets, its factories, machineries, and inventory. In this day and age, in the information technology, our most valuable companies' most valuable assets are their intangible assets. Their brands, their algorithms, their designs, their processes, all of which are protected by intellectual property. The building blocks of intellectual property, patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets, are long a staple of the Silicon Valley's economy, but they're quickly becoming the cornerstone of our nation's economy. According to one study, the entirety of the US economy relies on some form of intellectual property. And IP-intensive industries support at least 400 million jobs and account for more than 1/3 of our gross domestic product. Indeed, trademark registrations issued here in the Silicon Valley reached a new record level in 2014. And patents, too, play a vital role in our economy. A paper just issued by the USPTO's Edison Scholar, a program that's supported by the White House, further underscores the importance of patents to startups and small businesses. The study presents a causal evidence that patents help startups grow, create jobs, facilitate access to capitals, and generate follow-on innovations. The paper also found that an approval of a startup's first patent application increases employment growth over a 5-year period by an average of 36 percentage points more than without the patent. And the effect on sales growth is even larger. Again, this state, and in particular this region, has been a leader, not a follower, on these issues. Let us look at the facts. In 2015, almost 30% of all patents filed domestically across the United States came from California. 30%. And this year's Silicon Valley Index shows that Silicon Valley residents produced nearly half, 47.7%, of patents granted to inventors from California. So, as we look to the next 5, 10, 20 years, the USPTO is making sure that we are advancing policies that ensure that we continue to have strong intellectual property system to enable innovators in California and beyond, and to empower the next generation of innovators to achieve even greater success, while making sure that our communities have the resources necessary to create an ecosystem where innovation can flourish. As a leader of America's Innovation Agency, I feel a special responsibility to drive continuous improvements to our intellectual property system, both domestically and internationally. In an increasingly global marketplace, where your first sale can just as easily be over the internet in Shanghai as in San Francisco, our companies, whether you're a startup or a huge corporation, need to think globally from day one. Worldwide, in 2014 alone, the US consumer goods and services accounted for $200 billion in exports. This is big business for you and for our economy. However, we all know that the intellectual property landscape internationally for businesses varies from country to country. To ensure a level playing field when you enter foreign markets, the USPTO is working with policymakers across the globe to ensure that you have adequate protections for your company's most valuable assets, its intellectual property, and that there are sufficient remedies if your intellectual property is stolen. From China to India, Brazil to the European Union, we are actively engaged in these issues and working with our foreign counterparts to foster an international business climate that is conducive to the export of American products across the globe. Second, we must empower the next generation of innovators by ensuring that they have the education and skills necessary to succeed in what you and I know to be a very promising future based upon innovation. Just the other week, President Obama announced plans to empower students from kindergarten through to high school to learn computer science, equipping them with the analytical skills they need to be creators in the digital economy and not simply consumers. In 22 states, computer science doesn't even count towards the high school graduation requirement for math and science. And 75% of schools don't even offer a high-quality computer science course. Even here in Silicon Valley, this disparity is all too apparent. All of our kids, whether they grow up in Palo Alto or East Palo Alto, whether their name is Isabel or Ahmed, they need to have the skills to succeed in the 21st century innovation economy. At a time when your companies cannot hire the technical talent that you need to run your businesses, it's an economic imperative, as well as a social one, to ensure that we are nurturing and developing all of our talent across our great country, across all geographic regions, and across all demographics. To this end, the USPTO is doing everything that it can to spark that interest and that passion in invention, creation, making, and STEM. In 2014, the USPTO launched right here in Mission College the National Summer Teacher Institute, designed to train and provide content to middle and high school teachers so that they can share with our kids some of the amazing inventors that file applications at the United States Patent and Trademark Office, the inventions that they created, the companies they built, and the industries that they spawned based upon that patented technology. The USPTO, and I would be delighted if more kids in our society, in our community, wanted to become inventors and entrepreneurs. Our community and our society will be better for it. We work closely with a nonprofit called Invent Now to offer what we call Camp Invention, a one-week summer enrichment program that is STEM-focused, that brings in 100,000 kids across the country from all 50 states, including kids from underprivileged backgrounds. They come to this amazing summer camp and they get hands-on experience on making, designing, prototyping, redesigning, sketching out the basics of a patent, and thinking of an entrepreneurial business model. Camp Invention is just one example of what we do, and we have 13 camp inventions here in the Bay Area with 1,200 Bay Area kids participating each year. In addition, the USPTO has launched an all-in-STEM initiative where the USPTO attempts to recruit, retain, and promote more women in the STEM fields. If we are successful in providing more paths to more Americans to ensure education, training, and careers in the STEM field, our nation will be more competitive in the years ahead. In this year's State of the Union address, President Obama said, "The spirit of discovery is in our DNA." To that end, I'd like every child throughout the United States to think about invention, tinkering, building, and entrepreneurship. Because if you think about it, there is no age requirement to get a patent. And why shouldn't all of our children be inventing sooner rather than later? Finally, we at the USPTO are trying to do our part to make sure that our local communities have the resources, not just the skills they need to succeed in this changing economy. To this end, we are working to better serve the local innovation community through our 4 regional offices outside the Washington, D.C. area across the country, in Denver, Detroit, Dallas, and the Silicon Valley. We like to call our offices innovation embassies because they are hubs of innovation, education, and outreach. Last October, we celebrated the opening of our new permanent office here in the Silicon Valley in San Jose City Hall, which makes it easier for all of you to tap into and use the many services offered by the United States Patent and Trademark Office. I have the special privilege of being the first director of the Silicon Valley Regional Office. And when Silicon Valley was selected as one of 4 sites across the country for these regional offices, I immediately saw the impact of this office and what it would have on our region. And it was, in fact, what attracted me to public service. After a long career in the private sector, I wanted the ability to help define, to shape, and to stand up this office so that it could better serve the community that I grew up in and that I know so well. And now, innovators all up and down the West Coast have easier access to services offered by the United States Patent and Trademark Office, including the ability to have face-to-face conversations with patent examiners as they discuss the intricacies of their invention, rather than in the past, if you wanted to have a conversation with your patent examiner, you either had to fly out to Alexandria, Virginia, or you had the conversation via phone. They're also able now to walk into our office to participate in educational and training programs on the basics of intellectual property, such as patents, copyrights, trademarks, and trade secrets. How do I file for them? How can these tools help me achieve my business goals? And if I'm thinking about selling my product overseas, what factors might I need to think about on the intellectual property front? They can also come in to use our search terminals to see if their invention is new or is something that has been done before. In fact, just yesterday evening, our Silicon Valley director, John Quebeca, who's sitting here in the front row, hosted a speed dating for startups workshop in our Silicon Valley office that provided a series of vignettes on a variety of important intellectual property topics. We believe this kind of engagement across the community will make a big difference, especially for our startup companies and our individual inventors, which we know are the lifeblood for our country's continued economic success. This is your office. So use it and let us know what we can do better to meet your needs. In closing, I mentioned President Obama's State of the Union at the beginning of my remarks. During his address, President Obama urged all of us to race to shape a better future. The innovators and entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley have been part of this race for a long time. So when we gather to discuss the state of the Silicon Valley, we gather to tell a story of entrepreneurs and innovators who have been leaders in their field for the last at least 50 years. Some of their stories can be seen at our Silicon Valley regional office, where we highlight the inventors and innovators who have created new industries and have shaped our future. These are names you would recognize. Some of them are Nobel Prize winners. Some are inductees into the National Inventors Hall of Fame, and many of them are our colleagues and our contemporaries. These catalysts of innovation serve as a constant reminder that there's a spark of genius in all of us. All of us in this room have a vital role to play in transforming our society and indeed our world. Each year, new office buildings rise up from the land of apricot orchards and eucalyptus groves and produce new leaders and innovations that provide such great nourishment to our economy and our society. We from the federal government and the private sector, from Silicon Valley to Washington, D.C., must continue to work together to do our part to lead the policy issues that will impact the future and innovation, to nurture the next generation of inventors, innovators, and entrepreneurs, so that our nation can continue to unlock new technologies, new jobs, and new industries. Washington looks forward to partnering with all of you in this very worthwhile endeavor. Thank you.